How's it going, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Mass Media Hysteria, the one and only podcast in the world that talks about movies, TV, movie news, etc. Except we don't even talk about TV that much. Anyway, I am your host this week, Chris. Our usual ringleader, Court, is out this week, so Andris and I are going to take over. Andris, how are you doing?
Pretty good. Yeah, Court issued a statement. He said he had to fly to Metropolis to help assemble the Avengers and use his Planeteer ring because he pilots the green Voltron Tiger. So, best of luck, man.
I know. That sounds extremely dangerous, but also very courageous and heroic. So, just a quick golf clap round of applause for Court as he saves the day yet again. So it's us. We're pretty much the henchmen of Court's kind of YouTube channel. So us two henchmen are going to hold down the fort. But we have a pretty fun episode this week. So we're a little light on movie news. There's no real big movies that are even coming out for us to review. So Andris kind of came up with the idea of doing a bit of a, I would say, a winter themed. Initially,
Yeah.
it was winter themed.
Yeah.
Kind of movie special. What was your thought process there?
Well, I was thinking the first half of December can be pretty, I don't want to say terrible cinema releases wise, but there's usually not as much to really dig into. So I thought, hey, we like movies. Let's go back. Let's throw it back and dig in and see what we can watch and discuss. And here we are.
Yeah, no, perfect. And you seemed initially against, because when he mentioned it to me, I was like, okay, I was thinking of Christmas movies, and you were like, no, damn it, not Christmas movies. It's too early, which I think is insane. When we're already snowballs deep into December, so I'd say that you can start getting into the Christmas spirit. I don't know about these people that just start watching Christmas movies like the day before. I'm kind of an all December leading up to Christmas kind of guy. So that being said, the movies that we're talking about today are Black Christmas, the original from 1974, and Jack Frost, the horror movie, straight to video horror movie from 1997.
Yes.
Both Black Christmas and Jack Frost have had other similarly titled movies and sequels come out. We're going to touch on all that. It can get a little confusing. And it was funny, again, we'll touch on it more, that I was the one that chose Black Christmas for us to watch.
Yes.
Andris was the one who chose Jack Frost. And it kind of turned out to be a bit of a Christmas movie too. Whether
holiday season.
Yeah, obviously we'll touch on it more, but I thought that was kind of funny because I just thought it was going to be strictly just snow based, but I was oh no, there's some Christmas trees, there's some Christmas action going on.
Spreading a little Yuletide fear, if you will.
Ooh, yeah. So I also wasn't intentionally the theme just to make it horror, but I don't know. I got in the spirit. It felt like it was a nice, odd horror Christmas double feature.
Absolutely. Oh, and I am not fighting nothing. There is a wild puppy. Hello, look at the puppy. She will be climbing on me, and she will be disruptive. It's gonna be great. Let's get this show going.
She's our third co-host for today. Easily the cutest out of the three. I mean, it's hands down. But yeah, so periodically, if you're watching, you'll probably see her little head pop in, and if you're only listening, you're just gonna hear us every once in a while fawn over nothing, something that you can't see. This is perfect. But yeah, before we get into the movies, the only really big kind of movie news that occurred over the last week is in regards to Spider-Man No Way Home. And no, they didn't release a new trailer or anything. We've been talking about this movie for a while. What was interesting is that tickets finally went on sale on Monday. And it seems to have genuinely broken the internet, that old cliche. But the reason why I thought this was noteworthy is that A lot of people, a lot of like Fandango and other online ticket retailers are indicating that this is the best advanced ticket sales since Avengers Endgame in April of 2019.
Damn.
So not only is it the best of the pandemic era, but it's better than a whole lot of other big budget movies from 2019. It outpaced the last Spider-Man movie. It's outpacing Star Wars Episode 9. And even some are reporting, like not every chain, but some chains like Fandango are saying that technically it is outpacing day by day the pre-sale tickets for Avengers Endgame. Now, what that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to open to bigger than Avengers Endgame. What it just means is that more people bought tickets day one for this new Spider-Man movie than they did for Avengers Endgame. And that's pretty incredible. And it's pretty incredible for a few reasons. But Andris, before I kind of get into mine, what does this mean to you? If you hear this news, does it do anything? Or are you just kind of like, or do you think this is actually pretty big news?
Oh, it's big news for sure. I mean, the pandemic shut everything down. So starting to see things going back, very noteworthy and exciting.
Mm-hmm. Are you surprised that this is the movie this year that's generating this much buzz? Because there's been other big noteworthy movies that came out. You know, Black Widow, Eternals, Fast and Furious 9. There was a new James Bond movie. Were you surprised that like Spider-Man is the one that's like far and away exceeding those others?
Yes, but I think the timing has a big factor in it. Because now people are getting way more comfortable. You know, pandemic vaccines have been going out. People are getting vaccinated. People are getting more comfortable and they're willing to, you know, go for it again. So, but yeah, no, it's, I don't know if it's necessarily the film. I mean, it's an ambitious film. We've been talking about it for months now, but at the same time, I think the timing is a bigger factor. Knock on wood in case the Omicron variant gets crazy.
Yeah. That's one of the concerns that people are talking about when it comes to people returning to the movies. Of course, COVID's still going on, and there's always new variants that occur. At the moment, although scientists were talking about Omicron in the sense that they still need to do a lot of research on it, what I've been reading though is that there's nothing necessarily at the moment indicating that it's more deadly than any other variant. It could potentially be more transmissible, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's more deadly. And I think because of that, I think that's something that we're going to just have to deal with for the next few years, probably, is just more and more variants that aren't necessarily worse, but maybe just sort of like, okay, well, this one's more transmissible. So in 6 months, get a booster or whatever, different kind of booster to cover the variants.
Yeah. It's gonna be just slipping through the cracks of what the vaccine can cover.
Yeah, but eventually it will cover it. Right. Again, looking back to the 1918 Spanish flu, that went through like countless sort of permutations and variants before eventually just kind of becoming what we now consider to be the common flu. And which is strange to me because, I don't know about you, but growing up, I never thought of the flu as anything serious. Like, I think I was a teenager or an adult when I found out that people could actually even die from the flu, because I just thought it was like, oh, it's whatever.
I never got flu shots because I was like, I'm fine. I don't make out with people all the time, so
just some of the time. All right. Yeah, I'm pretty selective on who I make out with.
But yeah, no, that is kind of a horrifying, or it's like, oh man, what's COVID gonna be in 20 years? Just like, oh, I got COVID, I gotta stay home this weekend.
I mean, honestly, to my opinion, that'd be like a pretty good case scenario where it's just sort of like, who cares? Like get a seasonal shot for it.
And we're gonna be the crotchety old guys like, when I was your age, COVID killed.
Yeah, and they're like, whatever, Grandpa. Yeah. But yeah, back to Spider-Man. I do agree that I think that if this movie had come out earlier in 2021, it probably wouldn't have made as much, because I think that it's based off of the success of other films that have come out this year that people feel comfortable going back to the theaters. However, just the sheer fact of the numbers of it, of how many tickets are selling that are on par, with pre-pandemic records, like Avengers Endgame. To me, that shows that it's both simultaneously people are more comfortable going back to the theaters, but also people really want to see the Spider-Man movie. I was surprised because I know, although it's technically not confirmed by the studios, I think everybody and their mother knows that this is going to be kind of like a Spider-Verse movie. They're probably going to have Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. And when I first heard about that, like earlier this year, that was going to happen, I was like, cool. And I assumed that other people online would be like, oh, that's kind of fun. But I never imagined that this many people would care that much, because it's like, I mean, I think, the Spider-Man movies with Tobey Maguire that were directed by Sam Raimi, those were a big deal when they came out. Mm-hmm. But I didn't think that they still had, this much of like a lasting impact. Did you?
No, I agree entirely. I mean, it's a fun, I don't want to say novelty, but kind of, it's like, hey, he's going back in the suit again. And then Garfield, who, okay. Anyway, you know what I'm saying.
I like Andrew Garfield, regardless of what the movies he was in for Amazing Spider-Man, but I do quite like him as an actor, and in the role he's fine. So if they want to bring it back.
No. I just mean, you start talking about those Garfield films, people kind of just lower their eyes to the floor and they're like, hey, that new Tom Holland film though, right?
Yeah, it's pretty good. But you see, I think that's also what surprised me, is that it seems that people, despite the reception of those Garfield films, I guess just the idea of like, okay, well, he's joining in on the Tom Holland adventures. That's enough for people to get excited. So it's like, okay, maybe his movies weren't great, but him being a part of this universe is exciting.
No, he's a welcome addition. And I mean, just the whole idea, as I said last time, a multiple Spider-Man film. That's going to be awesome to watch, because the acrobatic moves they could do with like teamwork and shit, it's going to be great.
Yeah. Oh, hopefully. I mean, fingers crossed. I actually haven't gotten my tickets yet for it. Have you?
No.
Okay, so I'm gonna keep an eye on it, because obviously that's going to be the biggest movie of the weekend when it comes out to talk about on here. So I should probably look in to see if I can get tickets that weekend. They can't all be sold out, right?
Well, we'll find out.
I know. It's just when I was hearing reports about like, oh, Fandango is crashing and people are waiting online for like hours to get it. I'm like, screw it. I don't have time for that anymore.
Absolutely. We're getting too old for this shit, man.
Exactly. Dude, I literally just rewatched Lethal Weapon just yesterday. so that quote is fresh in my mind.
Got the fear of toilets back in your life?
Exactly.
I will say though, had it happened, or had it come out later in the year, I think Godzilla vs. Kong would have taken the place of this hype.
You think so?
Yeah, I definitely think so. It's not just because I'm a biased Godzilla fan. I think you talk about putting those two in a modern film together, that gets people crazy. Yeah. So had it come out later in the year, it might have usurped the throne from Spider-Man, but it's all right. It's
maybe
fine.
I mean, you know me, I'm a massive Godzilla fan, but I still think it might be a little bit more niche than Spider-Man. I mean, I think I agree. I think it probably, I mean, it did, that was Godzilla versus Kong was the first movie during the pandemic era that I think actually made some serious money. Yeah. So it's clear that if it came out later, it would have made more. But I still feel like, I don't know. I still feel like Godzilla, even the highest grossing Godzilla movie was only about 500, 600 million worldwide. And like, the highest grossing Spider-Man movie was like 1 billion. So I
It's
think
true.
so I still think it's a little niche, but I do agree that it would have made more if it had come out a little later, if they just held off a little longer. But that's okay.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
I'm glad they didn't hold off, honestly,
Yeah.
even though it would have been nice for them to make more money. But this paved the way to get where we are today.
Exactly.
Let people know, hey, it's gonna be okay.
Yeah, it's
to
gonna
go
be
to
fine.
Theaters. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
So thank you, Godzilla and Kong, for your service to this industry. All right, so movie news out of the way, and now on to our main festive topics. We're going to go over Black Christmas first. Let me pull this up. And this is the first time you've seen it.
Yes, I went in completely blind. I knew about it, it'd always been in the background, but I kind of tried digging for the more obscure titles, and like Black Christmas, it's always, top of the list Christmas horror films, and I'm But when a podcast asks for it, I answer the call.
Yeah, this is definitely one of those movies. This is the original from 1974, directed by Bob Clark. There have been 2 remakes since then. One, I believe, in 2005, and then one as recently as 2019. I haven't seen the most recent one. I've heard people are not fans of it. And judging from the trailers, it looks like it has barely anything to do with this. So just kind of a remake in name only. But this one, like you said, it's one of those movies that I think a lot of people have heard about, and maybe not everybody has seen. This is, it wasn't a huge success when it came out, but it was still popular enough that it kind of gained a bit of a cult following along the years. And by now, like you said, if you kind of look up like Christmas horror movies, this is usually near the top of the list. So since this is your first time, with all that sort of hype and this cult following, did you find that this was deserving of all that attention of one of the better holiday horror classics?
That's a tough question. There are some pretty great ones out there. I will say this one did surprise me, though. We're gonna talk spoilers, right?
Yeah, we can talk spoilers. So yeah,
I won't mention what the spoiler is because we'll get to it. But I did not expect that ending.
Okay, definitely.
That threw me off. I was like, oh, it's obvious that, and it wasn't. I was like, oh,
yeah. Before we get into that, you could just say what were your what did you think of this after coming out, regardless of its placement in the canon of Christmas horror?
I enjoyed it. It was I don't want to say fun because it is a horrifying experience.
Yeah.
But at the same time though, it's not as like horrifying. It's just it's a 70s film, so it's very matter-of-factly presented. I enjoyed it, yes.
Good.
Now, where does this in the timeline of Christmas horror? Is this like the first big one that like, because anything before the 70s, I can't think of any substantial Christmas horror films that were like this. This was kind of the archetype.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I was trying to look it up as well. So I don't want to say this is definitively the first one ever, but I really do think that this is probably one of the first it certainly is the kind of the archetypal Christmas horror movie. Yeah. Because after this, you do get movies like that feature a killer Santa or killer elves. There's Silent Night, Deadly Night, but those are kind of like late 70s, early 80s fare.
Yeah.
And this one came out in 1974. So there really wasn't something like that. And keep in mind, this was also before Halloween, and this was before Friday the 13th. So this idea of the holiday themed killers, the holiday themed horror movies, it wasn't really around.
Yeah.
which I find fascinating. And I think it's another reason why this has kind of gone down in cult status, because a lot of people like to attribute Halloween as kind of like the proto slasher film, the one that kind of propped it up, even though there's been several other movies that I think could also fit the slasher bill well before Halloween. And this is one of them.
Yeah.
It's not quite done in the same style, but I mean, there's a killer who goes around killing people, mostly young women who are, either babysitting or the sorority girls. It's on a holiday theme. It's kind of this is kind of a proto Halloween in a way.
It is a well, I don't know if I want to say pioneering slasher film, but I definitely agree with what you're saying, because like, recently, for my channel, I had no Christmas movies to review. So I started looking, and I looked at all the Christmas horror and Christmas sci-fi films really before the 70s. You didn't this was kind of, I don't want to say, well, maybe I am saying groundbreaking, I don't know. Because it really is like the first time anything, with the 60s you get like Santa Claus Conquers the Martians.
Yeah.
No offense to Santa Claus Conquers the Martians, but you know what I'm saying here.
Yeah. Yeah, there wasn't quite something with this twist, like, because I'm even just kind of like going through right now, and I'm seeing like let's say there's like a weird kind of what's it called? It's kind of like a puppet movie, like a ventriloquist movie from the 40s that appears to be like have a sequence set around Christmas, but it doesn't appear to be like Christmas themed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
with
yeah,
Christmas as the backdrop.
yeah. So which is interesting, because like as far as the slasher aspect goes, that's been around for a bit. There was plenty of movies from the 60s, either from Mario Bava or early 70s from Dario Argento, like the Italian Giallo films. Those are pretty much slashers. Guys, they put on the black gloves, they hunt down women throughout the movie. It's usually a mystery of who the killer is. Those are slashers, but also not holiday themed. So
yeah, they just went on a killing holiday, if you will.
There you go. Like, I got these fancy gloves, I gotta just gotta moita.
Don't you just want to murder in these?
Don't you just want to kill in these?
Oh, mercy. But yeah, no, I will say it holds up. It's what I like about it. This is because of the decade it was made in the 70s. Things were getting kind of sleazy. They were letting their hair down about things. I believe Texas Chainsaw Massacre came out the same year, and it was like Hollywood's horror was changing as a whole, because the 60s were still campy and fun, stateside. But come the 70s, things were, there's people smoking and swearing and nasty phone calls, and
it gets pretty dark, man. And the whole movie it's shot extremely dark. Like, this is not just tonally, but like visually, this is a dark movie. It's just a lot of shadows and things coming out of the darkness. But yeah, before we really get into it, because I'll say right at the top that I really enjoy this movie. I've seen it before now, and it's one kind of a cult favorite of mine as well, for those reasons, and we'll touch on it more. So I would recommend it to people. So if you haven't seen it, and this is one of those movies that you've heard about, kicked around a bit, like, if that the name sounds familiar, I think I've seen it on some Christmas lists. I would say check it out without any kind of spoilers. Go check it out, because I think that if you're interested in kind of horror movies or holiday themed horror movies, this will definitely be up your alley. Just know that it's for a Christmas horror movie, it's far less tongue-in-cheek than the majority of the other Christmas horror movies, and far less tongue-in-cheek than the other movie we're talking about later today. So just know that it's a little dark, but I still recommend it.
I agree.
Let's get into uninhibited talk. And right off the bat, just kind of a brief overview of what the movie is about. It's essentially it follows this woman by the name of Jess, who's played by Olivia Hussey. Um, and she's a girl that's part of a sorority house around the holidays that is kind of being bombarded and being kind of they're receiving these myriad of phone calls, and there's very threatening, intense, sometimes sexual, sometimes dirty, sometimes very vicious phone calls. They kind of play it off a bit like, oh, who is this? But as it goes on, some of their friends and some people around this town start missing. And so it's clear that the person who's behind these calls is genuinely sinister and could be a serial killer. So that's pretty much the basic setup. And that's, as far as horror movies goes, that's a classic setup. Sorority women being harassed by an unseen killer. That's a pretty easy go-to setup.
Yeah, absolutely. It's got a few things in common with Psycho, which surprised me.
Oh yeah, dude. In what way?
The two things are, number one, the person who you think is the lead is not the lead character, which is very like Psycho. And the other one is just the murders are largely suggestive, not shown.
Very true. Yeah.
And those two things, as I was watching, I was like, didn't expect Psycho to be an influence, but okay.
Yeah, I mean, you're quite right, because at the time, I mean, when the movie opens, even though Jess, the character played by Olivia Hussey, becomes the main character, you don't really see too much of her. It's like there's other characters, there's other women in the sorority house that answer the phone calls and kind of take it. Margot Kidder, who's famous for Superman, she's in it, and you think that like, oh, well, it's going to be Margot Kidder. And it's really not. So they do have a bit of a bait and switch in that way. So I quite like that.
Absolutely. I was like, oh, she's gonna be the one who's gonna carry this thing, and then spoilers, she dies.
Yeah. And as you were saying, the deaths are pretty tame. There's not really much blood. You don't really see anything. Even though things have been getting more graphic, like you said, in international films before that time. And even around this time, you had the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But this movie was, like you said, it's more suggested. It's more like you would see someone go into a creepy attic and like, like close up on a shocked face, and maybe you'll see a hand and then but you don't see blood. You don't see anybody really get brutalized.
Yeah.
But what I do quite like is that you often see the aftermath of what it is, and that's pretty eerie as well. Like one of the first kills is this woman, I believe her name is Claire in the movie.
Yes.
And you see her throughout the rest of the movie because the killer kills her with essentially a plastic bag and then just leaves her in the attic. And throughout the movie, you see just her body like mouth open, dead within this plastic bag, and nobody finds it.
Yeah. just the dead body on a rocking chair in that attic. I guess they never put their Christmas decorations away.
No. They're a Christmas all year round kind of sorority. But
that would drive anybody batty.
Oh shit. That's the reason why he's like, take it down. It's March. But Black March. But I think that things like that are kind of why I enjoy this movie, is that there's a genuine eeriness to it, where it doesn't go for schlock, it doesn't go for over the top kind of slasher kills. It kind of treats the deaths with a bit of sincerity, where people will stumble across dead bodies and it's eerie, like, you just see like lifeless, and you sometimes you don't even know really what caused it. They're just like laying there. And so I like that. And there's really eerie, quiet moments, like you mentioned, where you see the dead body just kind of rocking in the chair. And
it's that 70s-ness. I don't know what the 70s did with horror films, but they are legitimately unsettling in a way that, like, I can't think of other decades where that was a thing. Because like the 80s got more fun, the 90s nobody talks about, the 60s were campy. You know what I mean? Like there's this unnerving quality to 70s films that it keeps coming back for more, because you're like, what is happening?
Yeah. And I think what really does it for me is two things. One is the cinematography, which is, as I mentioned at the top, it's so dark. Like it's really just, and I know that can be annoying for a lot of people, but it really is, like, there's so much shadows. Like even when they have shots, let's say in like a police station, it seems like dimly lit. But especially when you're in the house, they, whatever kind of stock, like film stock they use, not only did it make the black color in the frame just so dark, but you would have like the Christmas lights would have like this kind of eerie ethereal glow.
Yes.
So it's like, yeah, it has like this kind of gritty, I don't want to say grindhouse because I feel like that phrase is kind of overused, but it does. It has like this gritty quality that you don't see in 80s films. You certainly don't see in movies now.
Yeah. There's just this dark, atmospheric, you don't know what it is. There's nothing happening. That's the craziest part. Nothing happens in half the scenes, but there's still just this atmospheric dread where you're like, oh man. I mean, largely because we know what that's interesting, because the plot twist
don't, yeah.
The plot twist is the killer's in the house, but you get this feeling the whole time. You're like, well, wait, he got in the house. You never see him leave. It's like, it's weird because it's a plot twist, but it's not, but it's, you know what I'm saying.
It's funny because it's that urban legend that, you know, that has been around for forever. And there is another movie that came out, you know, there's many movies that came out after this that have similar kind of moments. But there's a movie called When a Stranger Calls that I think might have been the first to use this urban legend, but everybody's heard it. But it's essentially, it often goes, you know, there's a babysitter alone at home, and she keeps getting threatening phone calls. And finally, you know, after she notifies the police, she gets a phone call from the police that says, "Get out, the killer is from inside the house. You know, he's calling from inside the house." And so in a way, it's sort of predictable. Like I feel like people, even before this movie had been made, had probably heard that story. That's probably one of those stories you share around a campfire. But it's still effective because, again, the house, like the sorority house is quite large. It's not a mansion, but it's got great space in great kind of dark rustic wood, and everything is so dark that when you get to that reveal of like the killer is calling from inside the house, it's you kind of do have this sinking feeling of like, oh shit, like, because it could be anywhere. Like it could be in the same room as you. It's that dark, and you know, just the fear of trying to get out while this is happening is, it's palpable. It still works today.
And the paranoia of, is the killer listening? At the same time on the phone.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't do that, but you're like, well, he could be.
Yeah,
because it was one landline.
There's so much mystery behind it that it does leave you wondering, like, where is he? What is he doing? What's he capable of? And that gets me to the second thing that I think really works for this film, and it's also very 70s, is the sound design of this. I thought was terrific because, again, how many movies have we seen where a killer, you know, calls on the phone and says something threatening? You know, I mean, there's 4 going on 5 Scream movies that you know, hinge on that, and those are more fun. You know, like, what's your favorite scary movie? It's not really threatening. But here, man,
oh my god,
some of the calls are just something about the voice and the way that 1970s sound design is so rough around the edges that it creates this legitimately creepy sound.
It's it doesn't sound like they're playing it up. It just sounds like the legitimate insane calls of a mentally disturbed person.
Yeah.
Like it's the kind of thing you'd expect to hear if a crazy person called you on the phone.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. It's like, Jesus. And it's someone who's actually threatening. Again, he's not playing it up like this is a fun killer icon in the vein of Jason Voorhees or, the ghost face killer from Scream.
Yeah.
This is like a lunatic that you don't see the face. He doesn't wear a mask. It's just like this mysterious person. And even by the end of the movie, it's kind of left ambiguous of who this person is. For a lot of it, they make it. They do have like another kind of red herring. The main character Jess, she has a boyfriend named Peter, who's I'm gonna mispronounce his name. It's actor Keir Dullea, and he's most famous, I believe, for 2001: A Space Odyssey. So if you've ever seen that, but throughout it, him and Jess keep kind of having bickering, which I'll get back to, because what they were talking about was pretty progressive for 1974.
Absolutely.
And they were fighting and stuff, and it makes it seem through a lot of it like this is the guy. Peter is the one.
I was completely sold. I was like, oh, it's too obvious. It's obviously him.
But then you get to the ending, and it's not, and it doesn't necessarily flat out say no, but at the same time, it's left ambiguous. Like the killer is not caught. Like the police come and they kind of take away the body of Peter, but then you still have like the final shots of lingering of showing Claire's body, which is still unfound, and that poor girl is just rotting away in that attic, and you're just like, oh, okay, maybe this was just some lunatic. It's just someone who is not connected to these people at all.
Oh, my take from it was, it was just there was a crazy person who was up in the attic. He was the killer. Don't know how he knew things from those conversations, unless he was hiding one of the 800,000 shadows and listening to conversations,
which is definitely possible. Yeah.
But the only other theory, I guess, would be he was in on it with Peter. Because there is one point where they're like, how is he getting multiple voices in the phone?
Yeah.
During the calls, they're like, how is he doing that even? So who knows?
Yeah.
They never made a sequel as far as I know.
Yeah. And because I think that I was thinking that it was going to be Peter, and maybe he had some sort of split personality thing going on. But
in the back of his head.
Exactly. Starts walking backwards. But no, it's kind of left ambiguous. Like I'm sure people can kind of come up with whatever theory they want, but I appreciate that it wasn't really spelt out, and it's left. What isn't left ambiguous to me is the fact that the threat is still out there, which is still eerie, even though there's no sequels. This is not one that spawned a big franchise, but it's still like, no, this evil is still out there, and that's also very uncomfortable to think about.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Like some films, they can leave things open, and it's like, well, that sucked. But in this case, the open-endedness really plays to its advantage, because it makes the film creepier.
Yeah.
You're like, what the hell? Who was it? You don't know. You never find out.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. No, I appreciated that aspect of it. But yeah, we not to touch on this off a lot, but again, going back to something that surprised me was the conversations and the arguments that were happening between Jess and her boyfriend Peter. Again, this is 1974, and I don't know when Roe v. Wade happened. Let me see. Hold on. Roe v. Wade. 1973. So literally just 1 year prior. And it's what the conversation is essentially that Jess is pregnant and she wants to have an abortion. And her boyfriend Peter is like, how dare you? Like he's so against that because it's his kid, and he feels like he has some ownership over it. But I just thought that it was really impressive, the level that they were having this conversation, because it wasn't treating the character of Jess, who wants the abortion, as like this evil, wicked woman, or it
Yeah.
wasn't like, oh, she's making a terrible mistake. It was more matter of fact. Like, she seemed smart, she seemed intelligent, she didn't seem, they didn't vilify her. And I thought, like, wow, 1970s, and you're not like vilifying someone who, a woman wanting to make that choice. I thought that was really kind of progressive.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. It makes sense though, because the 70s just kept pushing the envelope of previous decades, you know.
Yeah.
The more and more, that's what's so fascinating about that decade, is because you wouldn't have seen that in the 60s film, and you definitely wouldn't have seen that in the 50s film.
Oh,
Nobody
no,
would.
no.
No, and if they did, I mean, you know about the Hays Code, so it's like, if you talk about something like that, the character has to get their comeuppance, or you know, there was like this ridiculous roadmap you had to follow to make movies back in the day. But yeah, it's refreshing, which is weird to say about a film from the 70s, given how far we've come in certain aspects. But yeah.
No, I completely agree. It is refreshing because you know, we still watch a lot of 70s movies or movies of that era. So when something comes across as more progressive for that time, it's kind of like, oh, hey, cool, right on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't have too much more to say about this, other than just a fun little tidbit that I think a lot of people who've seen this already know, is that the director, Bob Clark, went on to do another seminal Christmas classic, and that is A Christmas Story from 1983.
What?
Yep. So the very one with Ralphie trying to get the Red Ryder BB gun, also directed by Bob Clark. And
holy shit.
You know what's weird is when you think about it, you're like, these movies couldn't be farther apart. But I guarantee you, if you watch some clips, you can kind of see the same sort of directorial style. Like, if it something about A Christmas Story also has, oddly enough, kind of a grittiness to it.
Yeah,
like, it has an authenticity to it.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
My mind is blown, ladies and gentlemen.
But yeah, talk about a weird 180. He makes a 1970s Christmas movie about people dying and talking about abortion and murder. And then one where the little kid just wants a toy gun and meets Santa Claus.
You'll shoot your eye out. Here's a bar of soap.
Exactly. So,
oh my God, that's insane.
Yeah, just a little fun fact for you.
Thank you. I will say, one thing that I did also like about Black Christmas, I had to think now that we have Christmas picture. I don't remember it being too exploitive.
No.
Like, towards women. It's just very frank, normal, everything's fine. Once again, it's nice because movies like this, they can get very exploitive.
Yes.
But this one doesn't do that, which is nice.
Oh, absolutely. No, I think that's a really great point. I mean, especially because, again, the plot centers around women in a sorority, you know what I mean? And especially in the 80s, if this was made maybe 10 years later, they would have played that up, because there's like sorority massacre, slumber party massacre, prom queen massacre, you know, it's all about that. And usually it's like a bunch of girls who are like, let's take a shower together, haha, and there's a lot of nudity. But
just tits everywhere.
It felt like a natural, I mean, for the most part, it still felt kind of like a movie, but it was more natural, of like a sorority where they're just women. They're not like having pillow fights. They're not walking around, topless or anything. There's no nudity in this.
No. And that's once again refreshing.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, basically, I think this is well worth your time. It's a small movie. It clearly doesn't have like a big budget, but it's still effective and eerie. And if you're looking for a subversive, darker kind of Christmas movie to watch this holiday season, I think that this is a top-notch choice.
Absolutely. And if you like cinematic history, this one's definitely something to check out too, because as we've established, it really, this kind of started the lean into, hey, holiday killings and shit.
Yeah. Again, everybody gives Halloween credit for it, and I'm not saying that this is officially the Guinness Book of World Record holder of the first one to do it, but it came out 4 years before Halloween, so I think it deserves some props.
Halloween launched the slasher genre.
Yeah,
I guess we could say. I had to think about that, but this definitely is not without its merits and without its significance.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, completely agree. Perfect.
So that's that.
There we go. And now we are moving on to our second film, which is quite different. And this is the film Jack Frost.
Yes.
Now, not to be confused with several other movies that are also named Jack Frost, one of which came out the very next year, which is also about a talking snowman with Michael Keaton in it, and it's a family film. Did you ever see that one?
I can't remember anymore.
You can't remember?
I don't think I ever did. I was especially as I got older, we're talking 98.
Yeah.
I was getting very resistant towards Disney. I was like, no, that's kiddie stuff. Let's go watch Godzilla. Come on.
Yeah, that makes sense. I I saw that. It's no big story, but I remember seeing that in theaters with my mom.
Wow.
And even at like 5 or 6 years old, I remember at the end, I just hear like this sniffling, and I turn over and my mom is crying. And I remember even at 5 being like, Mom, it's a snowman. Like, come on, like get it together. Like, I'm the kid here. It's not that big a deal.
Like, come on now. This isn't Ghostbusters Afterlife.
Exactly. Yeah. Come on. Cry over real shit. But yeah, so it's not that one. And also you said that you initially started watching a 1979 claymation movie.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I was like, all right, here we go, Jack Frost. And it's like, like I'm like, wait, that looks very stop motion. And now Jack Frost is singing.
That's also one I've seen, like, because I think everybody's seen Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, or one about
those classic Rankin Bass films.
Exactly. So this, I think, it's, if not made by him, it is by them, Rankin Bass. And so I might check that out actually later, but we're not talking about that one. We are talking about the 1997 straight-to-video horror comedy, Jack Frost, about a serial killer who transforms into a snowman and goes on a killing rampage in this very, very small town, which is, as far as I can tell, is maybe one street corner. And mayhem ensues. So, Jack Frost, have you heard of this movie before? Have you seen it before? What did you think?
It has always been on the back of my radar, or in the back burner, whatever the phrase is. I knew it existed, is what I'm saying. But I never checked it out. Is this a Full Moon production?
I'm not sure. I didn't see that logo beforehand.
Because that's always been my big resistance. I'm not a Full Moon Pictures fan. I don't like their films. And this kind of gave me like Full Moon vibes. But no, I finally, I was like, all right, well, I've been meaning to check this out. Let's throw this into the gauntlet here for this podcast and watch it. Had you seen it before now?
No, but like you, I was aware of it. In fact, if you look up the poster for it, or the cover of it, that image is forever burned in my mind, because every time I would go to Blockbuster, I would see the cover of it, and it had a cool, like, it was one of those 3D effects where it looked like a normal snowman, but if you turn it, then you see it transform into a scary snowman with teeth. And the scary snowman that's on the cover looks nothing like the snowman in the movie, which is a bit...
as is tradition with most straight-to-video films.
Yeah, so
it's like, hey, look how cool this is. You're not going to see it, though.
No, exactly.
But we got your money already.
So I I had heard of this movie. In fact, I've known about it since I was a kid, but this is the first time that I'd seen it.
I might have watched it halfway through at one point and then given up or something. I can't remember.
Did it look kind of familiar in parts?
Yeah, I vaguely remembered plot points, but I remembered not getting through the whole thing. So
yeah,
and now I did.
And was it worth it?
Well, we're gonna get into it. I initially enjoyed it, but something happened in it that just ruined the film for me completely.
Okay. Afterwards. I'd be interested to hear what that is.
We'll get to it.
Yeah. So right off the bat, I think we can both agree that this is not a good film.
No.
And so really all that I knew that going in, and I wasn't trying to be biased, but I was like, this is a made for video horror comedy about a killer snowman.
Got to bring those standards down.
Yeah. So really the bar for me was, is this a good, bad movie? Is it
entertaining?
Exactly. Is this entertaining? Is this something that you can, watch either by yourself or with some friends and get enjoyment out of it? And I'm kind of mixed. I think that the answer is yes and no. Because like you, I didn't have one thing in particular that kind of brought it down, but I think that it did kind of wear out its welcome a little bit for me by the end of it. So let's get into it.
Okay. The biggest thing I took away from it was it's a slasher, but it's a child's play type slasher.
Oh, very much. Child's play was going through my mind a lot through it.
Because a lot of people always say, oh, quip throwing slashers, you think of Freddy Krueger. It's like, yeah, but then child's play happened and things got even sillier.
Yeah.
And this is very much a child's play type film. Especially because it got raunchy. It was willing to let things get crass and raunchy. I sound like shielded by talking like that about it, but you know what I'm saying though.
No, I know what you mean. It got schlocky and it got exploitive. Yes. At the very least for a sequence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. Overall, it's fun, but it's that scene that ruined it for me is really.
Oh, really? Okay. That I've heard of that scene before. I remember hearing about it, and we'll touch on it. But basically, I start the movie. I'm watching it on Shudder. Shout out to Shudder. Not sponsored, but I just like that service. And to be honest, right off the bat, I was initially surprised, thinking this has some kind of solid direction for what I was expecting. And unfortunately that direction is sort of hit and miss throughout the movie, because like it starts pretty strong. You see the sequence of police officers transferring a prisoner named Jack Frost, who is a serial killer on death row. So they're transporting him during a snowstorm, and it's pretty well done. Like you have some banter between two cops in the front as they're driving during a snowstorm trying to see, and then you get some nice close-ups of Jack kind of stealing a cigarette and stuff. So it seemed like a lot of care was put into this opening that made me laugh out loud, because you see this transport truck driving down the road, and then you see another truck that just on the side of it says something like genetic experimentation or whatever the shit. Yeah, and I just cackled.
Absolutely. I gotta look something up real fast.
Oh yeah.
Keep going.
But basically those things collide. The serial killer Jack is thrown out of the truck, and eventually he gets all this genetic sort of acid and material thrown on him, and there's a pretty cool gnarly effect, some great kind of one of the few instances of pretty good makeup effects, actually, of just his skin just burning and he's just melting. And through the comic book logic of science fiction, his molecules combine with this material, and he becomes a sentient snowman.
Yes, he does. I was while you were talking, I was looking up to see because there was something else that I noticed that I'm surprised was not the case. This has a very Tales from the Crypt feel to it.
Yeah,
especially that opening
yeah,
but the director had never directed anything from Tales from the Crypt.
yeah. No, I could see that. It feels like, and I feel like this might even work better if it was kind of like a short segment for like a Tales from the Crypt sort of episode,
Yeah.
as opposed to like a 90-minute movie. But yeah, it definitely has that vibe of just, it's kind of pulpy, it's kind of comic booky and out there. But I was on board. I was like, you know what, this is a goofy setup. I legitimately liked the opening. Um, so I was on board, and it's kind of up and down throughout the rest of the movie for me. It's this that level of direction by Michael Cooney is his name, is inconsistent. Like, he seems, to really care obviously about when the snowman is on there and he's killing people, but when it's just like Detective Dad, I don't know what his name is, the Detective Dad and his family, and they're just talking and whatever. It's clear the director doesn't give a shit. It's just kind of filmed blandly. The dialogue's not great. No, everyone's kind of giving like half effort. It's not embarrassingly bad. It's not comically bad. It's just sort of like, okay, this is boring.
It's not what you're here for.
No.
And they know it, so they're like, all right, we're just gonna just whatever, just got to get to the scene where he kills people with icicles.
Exactly. But eventually, that makes way for Jack Frost proper as a snowman, going around and killing people. And that's another thing that this movie just really, all it had to do for me is have good creative kills. Where this is in an era 20 years on from Black Christmas. So by now, slasher films had already kind of been played out, and they're run of the mill, and they follow a formula. So if you're going to see one that's a kind of a campy slasher, you want to see some great kills, or at least some competent original ones. And for the most part, it wasn't bad. There were some interesting kills. What did you think about some of the murders of Jack?
They set it up well enough, and the makeup was competent enough to get the point across. Yeah, most of them were good kills.
Yeah, I mean, there's a point where he shoves an entirely the dull end of an axe down someone's throat. I like that. He kills a woman by smashing her face into Christmas ornaments.
Yeah,
so I enjoyed that. His powers, I thought, were kind of just interesting, because it's not just that he's a snowman, but he can sort of he can kind of like change his form. Like, he can melt to kind of go through or under door frames to get into houses. He can shoot like these really sharp icicles at people and stab them. He has kind of like sharp teeth, icicle teeth, that he can bite people with. So he's got some cool abilities, actually.
Yes, he does. Even if the snowman doesn't look the greatest.
That's exactly what I was going to say. The problem being that the snowman looks just absurd. Like, he just looks like a puffy puppet. No one, even if you've never seen snow in your life, you're not going to be convinced ever, or even for a second, that this is snow. It just looks like a foam puppet. But even then, it doesn't. It's not a good foam puppet. It doesn't look good. But it's also not like so goofy that it's funny. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's just no. That's what it is. Just because, like, going back to Child's Play, for example, they knew they had great animatronics, but they could only use it for like 10 minutes in that film.
Yeah.
So much of that film is off screen, and they were able to competently make that film work. With Jack Frost, it didn't work because he just looked very clunky, and you're like, that's nothing. That is, I don't believe that's nothing. I'm sorry.
Yeah. The animatronics for Chucky are creepy. I mean, he's a creepy looking design. He actually looks like a toy, you know, that you would see, but in a creepy way. And this, it just doesn't look like anything. And
No.
I think maybe to be fair, maybe I got a couple laughs. There's one towards the end where he's just like in a car and the head just kind of like turns, and I got a laugh out of that. But a lot of it, he's on screen for a lot that it's just not that funny, and you can't really take it seriously at all, especially when it's like these oven mitt kind of looking gloves that are supposed to be his hands that don't have any dexterity. And so you're just kind of going through the motions and yeah.
And it just spent too much time just showing a still, you know, just him being still, because obviously they couldn't animate him that much. But
yeah,
it's like when your effects don't have what they need to do much, that's when you got to go with the Jaws approach, where you show less. This unfortunately, they were a little too confident with what they had.
Yeah, they put him front and center. Like, you right off the bat, you see. I mean, they do, like, maybe for one scene they do a little bit of what was I gonna say? You don't quite see him. Yeah, you see a little bit of build up, but at some point they just like kind of throw that away, and you just see him for the rest of the movie.
Like they gave the effects guy like $50, and they're like, we're basing 80% of this film on him being on screen. So
yeah,
best of luck.
Exactly.
I feel for the guy.
Yeah. And like what's it called? Like Child's Play. Chucky, the character of Chucky, this guy is kind of like a snarky, sort of like, he makes quips, he makes puns. He always has these one-liners that don't quite make sense to me. Like there's one where he kills someone, or someone shoots him, and he like turns and he just says, "Made in America."
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Yeah.
Like, what? Like, I don't know.
I don't know either. That was weird, because you're like, is he a staunch right-wing serial killer? I don't understand the jingoism here.
It's kind of a 90s thing, I suppose, of like, I don't know. I think that, you know, I was very young at the time, but I think that there was sort of this push to like buy American, but at the same time, it's not like a funny joke, and it's not like really topical. It's I don't know.
Weird. It falls flat because you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Reference. Thank you.
Yeah.
Please kill someone. Like,
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So he's not really a funny character. He doesn't have really the same kind of charisma or charm that Freddy has, or that Chucky has. He certainly doesn't have the menace that Chucky has.
He doesn't have the menace of Jason either.
Or definitely not. No.
The dread associated with Michael Myers.
Yeah, it's just and it's not even that iconic of like, I know it's a snowman is a snowman, but you could have done something to make him a little bit more distinct, to have a little bit more of an iconic look, and they just didn't even go to that extent either.
I agree.
But yeah, again, as the movie goes on, there are moments where I enjoyed it. Like, I think one of the earlier kills is it's like the father of this girl who ends up in the bathtub, and we'll get to that. But he goes out and he hears, like, he sees the snowman just standing there, and he hears this voice, and he doesn't know that it's coming from the snowman. So he gets an axe and he's kind of walking around all around the snowman. And I was like, that's kind of cool. I liked that, because it's like, it didn't, you know, it's too goofy to take seriously to actually have suspense. But I was like, this could work. It's not a bad idea of just kind of like this guy hearing this voice, and he's just walking full circle around the actual killer. It's in plain sight. So I like that. I like that, the hiding in plain sight kind of thing.
Yeah, it works in a Tales from the Crypt kind of way, where it's entertaining.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But also, I should say that it led to a good kill. That was when he shoved the axe down the guy's throat. But that family, it makes no sense. Okay, so that family, it's a mother, father, like adult daughter, and younger kind of teenage son. And early on, the son gets decapitated in a laughable way. Like the snowman. So he's like the it's just this bully teenager, and he's like, "Get out of the effing way, kid!" To this little kid. And then the little kid's like, "But this is my driveway." And he's like, "I don't give a shit. We're sledding here."
Yeah.
And so the snowman, in a weird, seemingly act of defense towards the little kid, pushes him. But that's all he does. He pushes him. And then the sled, which is made with, I don't know, like fucking adamantium, the same thing that Wolverine has, goes through and cuts his head off clean.
It's a great shot.
Yeah, no, so I enjoyed that. But what cracked me up is that later, the father comes and he's like, "It was your punk son." Okay, so the father comes to see his dead son, and then he turns to Detective Dad, who's ostensibly the main character, and his 6-year-old son, and I was like, "Your son did this," and he's like, "Dude, he's like 6. Like, what are you talking about? He didn't do this." Yeah,
and they also established that his son, the detective's son, is like weird.
Oh, dude, something happens at the end that blew my mind about that. Well, which we'll get into. But yeah, they should. You know what I'm talking about. So to set this up early in it, it's one of those scenes of like, "Well, honey, it's morning and I gotta go to the office," and they're all in the kitchen and stuff. And the kid is like making something. He's like, "I made this for you, Dad," and it just looks like garbage. It just looks like gray mush with like marshmallows in it.
Just the nastiest oatmeal you've ever seen.
Yeah. And essentially, how do I say it? The father kind of like, "Oh, that looks great. Here, I'll take some for work." Clearly just
to humor
exactly
him. Yeah.
So you see that there's some, it seems like, okay, well, maybe he's just like a little kid. But by the end, and I'm jumping around all over the place, but by the end,
have at it.
It's revealed that mush that he was making for his dad, he's like, "I put antifreeze in it to warm you up." And the dad isn't like, "What the shit?" The dad's like, "Oh, you." And I'm like,
Chekhov's fucking antifreeze.
Right. Yeah. So, and it becomes important, I guess, to the plot. But just the idea, I'm like, look, I know this kid is young, but he's not that young to like put antifreeze in his fucking food. And who was supervising this child as he was cooking? How did no one see him just like just pour that in?
Yeah, it's not a subtle little thing. It's a jug with like green liquid.
Exactly.
No, it's never like explicitly stated, but it's hinted that the kid's got problems of some kind.
Kinda, yeah, but they never like go into it, so it's just sort of like, okay, I guess he's weird.
He's just weird. Yeah,
that was the extent of it that I got, pretty much.
Going back a little, it is kind of funny that they were like, "Move your fucking snowman. We want to sled here." You're like, it's a drive. You can't sled there. It's not a hill.
What it's are you gonna... like it's flat land. Yeah.
It's just so silly, which made that death scene so worth it.
But also it reminded me that how everything, and I messaged you how this was clearly shot in an area where there was no snow.
Yeah.
Anywhere. And I looked it up and they were like, even though they did shoot it around wintertime, it was like a drought in that season, whatever location they found. So they just had pieces of cotton on the ground to look like snow. They did. But it was so unevenly dispersed. Like they have this wide shot of this street corner, and you will see this street corner for the rest of the film. It's pretty much all takes place either inside this one house, inside the jail, or this street corner. And I was sick of seeing it. But basically, people were building other snowmen, non-evil ones. And it's this wide of like the driest, plainest looking, just anything you've ever seen. And then just like a couple snowmen on this dry ass asphalt. And I'm like, you're not fooling anybody.
Well, you see, they only had enough budget to do the outside of one building.
Exactly.
So they were like, I wouldn't be surprised. This is a half joking, half this might actually be why. They were like, okay, we shot all these scenes. Take all the sheeting. We're going to that house over there to shoot the outside shots there.
I really think that's the case. I mean, it just they didn't have multiple locations. This was pretty much just it. Not the biggest complaint, just something kind of funny. Like, okay, there's no snow in this snow horror movie. Yes. But going into something that I thought was another thing that I thought was hilarious, but sticking with that family, the father whose son just died because of the horrible sledding accident. He comes home and he's obviously distraught, but then his daughter, who's played by Shannon Elizabeth, who's probably best known for being in American Pie, if you saw that first one. And she's like, all right, Daddy, I'm going to go see my boyfriend. And he says the most sensible thing. I forget what the line is, but he's just kind of like, your brother just died.
That's basically what he said, yeah.
Yeah, and like not 5 or 10 minutes later, she's with her boyfriend, ready to get it on. And it's like, dude, your brother just died like 2 hours ago, and you're just like, I want to have sex. It's like, what is wrong with her?
Yeah, it's really bizarre, especially because they go break into the detective's house to do the having of the sex.
Right? Why did I forget? I didn't catch why they needed to do that. Other than the fact that he wasn't home, but I couldn't figure out why, like, you couldn't go anywhere else.
Well, you see, Jack Frost was there, so they needed to get them in the house with Jack Frost. But
Jack Frost can go anywhere, seemingly.
It's true.
Yeah.
Well, she gives a throwaway line, though. She's like, don't you want to do something dangerous? It was something like that. And it's like, wow, the sheriff's house? Why would you break into any other place that's not the sheriff's house?
It makes no sense. I don't know. Everyone grieves differently, but it just I could not believe for a second that this person was like, let's have sex. It's like, no, that's probably the last thing on your mind right now. But also, I mean, I don't think so. The rest of her family also died, but I'm assuming that she was trying to get it on because nobody told her. Like, I don't remember a scene of people telling her that both her mother and father also died as soon as she left the house.
I don't think anybody knew yet at that point. Or maybe like
someone did. Like the cops found out.
There was a line, because they discovered the bodies, but they couldn't find her. They didn't know where she was. They were like, where is she? Oh, she's out and about right now. Well, like, okay, well, they'll find her eventually.
She'll find out at some point.
Yeah.
That probably still wouldn't have deterred her anyway.
No, those hormonal teenagers.
Yeah. But anyway, that leads to kind of the most infamous scene in the movie, but she's in the detective's house for some reason. She's about to get it on. And before it became too much, it did have a joke that I actually liked, which was she meets her boyfriend and they're inside and they're like getting ready to have sex. And it's this several quick cuts of them taking off all of the layers that they had. And I thought, was like, okay, that's admittedly pretty clever, because they're like, okay, take off the coat, then we take off the jacket, then we take off the sweater, then the other sweater, then this, and like all of them had like 15 different layers on, and it was a long sequence, and so I thought that was pretty clever.
It was well directed too. You're like, that's some great, that is comical. Nice.
It had good comedic timing. And then it just gets dumber from here, because she's like, go put on a fire or whatever, and then we'll do it. And he's like, okay. So she goes to blow dry her hair for about 10 minutes. And this becomes comical to me. I'll explain why, but she's blow drying her hair. Jack Frost comes in and he kills the guy, which was kind of cool. He like shoots the little icicles at him. So I thought that was kind of cool. But immediately afterwards, after this woman is just blow drying her hair for like 10 minutes, she immediately takes a bath.
Yeah.
Like no person has ever done in their life. Like no woman or man, anybody that has that long of hair and you just spent that much time blow drying it, you're not immediately getting it soaking wet after.
See, but it wasn't only the blow drying though. She put music on at the same time. And it's like, you've broken into someone's house. What? You're comfortable, aren't you?
Yeah, she that's why I forgot that it was the detective's house, because she just made herself at home.
Yeah.
But again, that's also not, that's a thing that movies do, where it's like people are about to get it on, they're like, let me go get ready. And usually that's like them putting on maybe a little bit more makeup, or they're putting on lingerie. It's not someone blow drying their hair. I gotta get this so warm for you. What the fuck?
Well, they needed to make her not hear that he was getting murdered.
Oh my god.
Like, that's the problem, is you're like, this is clearly so she doesn't hear it happening.
Just have her already go to the bath. Like, take a bath, have her listen to music.
Yeah.
Because she's ending up in that bathtub set anyway. Just do that. Anyway.
Yeah.
Where I'm complaining about Jack Frost. Anyway, but that leads to the most infamous scene that apparently was too much. You crossed the line for you.
Yeah, no, that's the scene that ruined the film for me. Oh, okay. Hi, puppy. Oh no. He's here to comfort me because she watched it with me. Hi. Oh.
The dog knows that this is a very difficult conversation we're about to have.
She's also got a little kennel cough right now.
Oh,
so
poor girl.
She'll be okay. We've been giving her cough medicine for dogs.
Yeah.
Anyway, no, my big thing. Oh, you okay, sweetie? You're okay. I don't like rape. I hate rape in movies. And this was an extended rape sequence played for laughs. And that really made me, I was just like, how was this okay? Because it's like the film kept skirting the line between acceptable and non-acceptable. But it was like they just bulldozed over this line with that sequence and played it for laughs.
Yeah.
And that ruined that ruined the entire film for me, because I'm like, fuck you guys. That's not okay.
Yeah, this definitely showed its age in that regard. I mean, this came out in 1997, but I was reading that it might have been shot around 94. Mm-hmm. And that's the kind of stuff that you would see from like a late 80s, early 90s horror straight to video movie, where they treat sexual assault as either funny or titillating. Like one of the weirdest things that I'm glad we're done with is essentially horror movies, because now it's not straight to video, it's a lot of straight to streaming stuff. But horror movies are not trying to get the titillation from rape anymore.
Now
they'll still probably have like women showering and changing, but there really used to be, I'll stop saying the R word, but there used to be really common where not only there's a scene where they're like, okay, we want to show this woman naked, we got this actress, we got to show her tatas, so just have her be assaulted by the killer or the monster. And it's like, who wants this? Who wants to see this?
Yeah, and it's just gross. And you're like,
yeah,
really? You couldn't go to the beach?
Yeah.
Showers happen. People get naked in showers.
Exactly. Like, I don't know why you have to merge the two.
Yeah, because it's really uncomfortable, and you're like, why is there like violent? Why?
Yeah.
Ew.
What's upsetting is that they didn't have to go in that direction, because when it was happening, essentially the woman gets into a bathtub and it's water, and Jack Frost, he can liquefy, but then he can refreeze somehow. And so he froze again with her in the tub, and she's kind of stuck inside, and he's just kind of like banging her head against the shower wall. And that could have been like kind of a cool death, just kind of like, and then like kills her.
Yeah.
But then they repeatedly show him just kind of ramming her against the wall. And I was like, is that what are they doing? What I think they're doing?
And then he starts making those nasty quips, and you're like, oh my fuck you.
Yeah, with the carrot and everything. So that's look, it's definitely of the time. It was probably like less sort of, how do I say it, controversial or raunchy at the time. It's like that's the kind of sleaze that you would see from a movie of this ilk. But watching it now, it is kind of like just eye-rollingly like, this is just tasteless.
It's gross.
Yeah.
And then just like playing it for laughs, and then just the rest of the film carries on like nothing happened, and it's totally normal and fine. You're like, can we talk about this? That's not okay.
Yeah. So that's definitely the most messed up scene. And I guess I that one I'd heard about, which I think obviously because it's probably like, I can't believe they actually went there. So I had heard about that sequence before. But yeah, that's not even necessarily the ending, because after that they have like multiple false endings that I was getting kind of annoyed with. Where they, movies do this, but usually they do it like once, where let's say it's a monster or a villain, and it's kind of it's the third act and they're leading up and they find a way to try and get him. They explode him and they're like, okay, we got him, until he's still alive for one last battle. Mm-hmm. And then they kill him. But that's not quite what they did. They had a sequence where, he comes into the police station, and they have this big old plan where they're like gonna blow up the police station because he's snow, so they're gonna melt him. So they blow him up, and they're like, "Oh, we did it!" But of course, they didn't do it. So then they come up with a plan to corral him using hair blowers, which is kind of funny. That's kind of funny.
It was cute. I liked it.
Yeah. So
even though I was still mad at the film at that point.
Yeah. This was after the fact of the bathtub incident. So it's kind of like, it's still weird that they're going for laughs. But anyway. So they corral him with hair dryers, and they put him into a furnace, and then he melts, and they're like, "Oh, he's dead now." But he's not. And at that point, I'm like, can we just stop? Like, can we actually just kill this stupid freaking snowman? Yeah. I'm kind of, because at this point, he's not killing anyone. He's just being like, he's just making quips, and it's not funny. Like, he reassembles himself, and he's like, my name's Picasso, or whatever the hell. And he makes another bad joke about like, I need an aspirin. Just shut up.
Yeah. Like,
shut up, movie.
No.
Shut up, movie. But eventually they discover, again because of Chekhov's antifreeze, that because the son is a lunatic and he was trying to murder his father with putting antifreeze in the oatmeal, they discover that an antifreeze somehow will affect it. Not because before it's like, okay, they've melted him, but he can become a snowman again. Then they burned him, but he evaporated and he became a snowman again. But somehow antifreeze both melts the snow and the human DNA. I don't know.
See, what bothered me about the antifreeze revelation is the fact that I didn't think it was going to be antifreeze. I thought it was going to be salt, because guys presenting salt to people, they oh, I got this salt for you, this big bag of salt. I'm like, oh, they'll use the salt because that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And then I was thinking like, oh, the kid's thing, clearly he would have put salt in there to keep him warm because he's a weird dumb kid. But fucking antifreeze came out of nowhere. It makes sense, but they could have introduced that way easier.
Yeah,
it's like throw him into the hardware store window and the antifreeze bottles burst and he goes, ah.
Yeah, no, they had to make the kid like a
fucking serial killer in training.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Excuse me. But then they have a weird sequence where they fill the back of a pickup truck with antifreeze. I got another laugh. I don't think this was intentional, but they show a character go into a store to get the antifreeze, and they had a whole window display of antifreeze, and I'm like, no one's ever displayed antifreeze in a window.
That's just a common item.
Yeah. So they get the antifreeze, they fill the back of a pickup truck in it. And this guy, Detective Dad, who's I guess is the main character, he like he tackles the snowman out of a window into the antifreeze. And he just got stabbed as well. So he has a gaping wound.
Yeah.
And he's totally fine just thrashing around in the antifreeze.
Acting like he did not just get stabbed in like the heart.
Yeah, he got stabbed in the heart, and he's in antifreeze, which I'm fairly certain if you just get on your skin will burn you. It's not. I'm not saying it's like acid, like an alien, but it will definitely hurt you if it gets in your eyes, in your mouth, in your nose,
or in a gaping stab wound.
Exactly. So
which did happen, contrary to what they want to act like.
But he's fine, and it's just killing. It's killing the snowman. One of the hands wraps around the kid's neck, and what do they decide to do? Just dunk their child into the entire antifreeze, like they're
throw him in there.
Yeah, like they're giving him like a baptism,
the antifreeze baptism.
Yeah, and I'm like, do you want to like blind your child? This is no way that, and he's like eyes open under the like. This is great. I'm like, no, you are blind, sir. I'm sorry.
Oh, you want to put antifreeze in my oatmeal, huh?
Yeah.
I did want to mention something.
Okay.
Them pushing him out of the second-story window into the back of a vehicle like that, that's a clear reference to the first Toxic Avenger film.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
That's the origin. The origin is, Melvin Junko, nerdy janitor. They're hassling him, and they're like, "Ooh, we're gonna play a prank on him." So they get him upstairs into the second floor of the gym, and then he gets to a window, and they freak him out, and he's like, "Ah!" and he jumps out, and he lands headfirst into. There was a truck that was just carting 55-gallon jugs of toxic waste. And he goes in. I was like, that's kind of a Toxic Avenger reference.
No, I can see that. Yeah. I didn't make that connection. I haven't seen the first Toxic Avenger in a while.
Oh,
but
man.
But that definitely makes sense. Not nearly as good. This is not nearly as good as Toxic Avenger. That's a good bad movie. This is just and that's pretty much the end of it. I mean, they melt him. They put it kinda. I mean, it's the end of the movie, but they set it up for a sequel.
Where you're like, oh, he can't be killed with antifreeze either.
Then what can kill him? He's unstoppable. I don't know.
I think they made a sequel. I don't remember.
Yeah, I looked it up, and I guess there's a sequel on IMDb, but
we're not watching it.
No, we'll never know what happens next. But that's pretty much Jack Frost. Look, I watched this by myself. Oh no, the dog is just like pawing.
She is going for it.
We're almost done, puppy.
But
I feel like if I'd seen this with a group of friends and we were having some drinks, I think that this would be more entertaining. But I just kind of watched it by myself, and even though I had some fun with it, it kind of drags in parts. It doesn't quite go as over the top as it should have. In the way that it did go over the top wasn't, I didn't like that direction, like you said, with the woman in the bathtub. So it's not necessarily worth it. Like if you are absolutely just chomping at the bit for a terrible horror Christmas movie, I don't think that you'd be disappointed. Like if you're used to seeing schlocky straight to video horror like this might you might get some entertainment out of it. But for everyone else, I don't think that this is your cup of tea.
Not required viewing. The scene just ruined it for me. I can't recommend it just because. Sorry. Don't be trash when you make these films.
No, that's definitely fair. So it's definitely should come with like a warning or an asterisk of like, hey, if this.
Know about that.
Because that's not something that you just want to be blindsided with, just this flippant regard for that subject matter. But that's fair. So how dare you, Jack Frost? You ruined our weekend.
Straight to video with you. Oh, already there.
Hey. All right, man.
Oh my god! Oh, she is hugging me now.
So the puppy, I think, is getting angsty.
Oh gosh, she's getting in my ear.
Oh no. Oh boy.
Hey Chris, where can people find you on Instagram?
So while my co-host is being mauled to death by a dog, you can find me on my Instagram channel or account, which is called Art of Light and Shadow. It's a fun daily blog of cinema where I just kind of talk about the classics, art house films, international films, pretty much everything. I try not to be prejudiced there in regards to the movies that I watch, so it's a great time. Check it out, Art of Light and Shadow. And Andris, where can people find you and the puppy?
If you do, well, she's not in the videos yet.
Oh no.
Let's see. If you do a YouTube search for Cheap Thrills, Unspeakable Terror, you will find my videos. I do reviews of low-budget sci-fi and horror from the dawn of cinema to the modern era.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Right on, guys. All right. So I hope you guys enjoyed that episode. You can, of course, always check these out on YouTube. We also have these put up on Spotify. I believe Apple Podcasts now. I'd have to double check with Court, but we're going to put the links on. If you don't want to watch a 90-minute YouTube video, you can always listen to this on your way to work, or if you're working out, just hanging out at home. Listen at your own convenience. We'll provide the links in YouTube below. As always, everybody, hope you stay safe. Everybody's doing well out there. And tune in next time when we have hopefully less problematic movies to talk about.
Absolutely.
All right, guys. Talk to you later. What is that? Like I'm saying goodbye on the phone? All right, guys. I'll see you later.
Good chat.
As always, take care, everyone.